Good morning, Kelsey. Good morning, Kelsey.
Good morning.
I said that earlier. I didn't know you had your headphones on. You were just staring at the screen.
Sorry about that.
Maybe she's gonna help her.
Hello, everyone. It looks like we've got a couple of participants joining us. I'm going to work on getting the screen share and everything set up here.
Hello.
Hi, Del.
How are you?
Good. How about yourself?
Good. I'll flip on my video after a while. You just don't need to see my ugly mug right away.
Well, that leaves it up to me to keep my mug up here for everybody to
Yep.
know that somebody's
That's
here.
best. Yep.
All right. We do have some participants joining us.
Sounds good.
While we are getting set up here, it would be really helpful for us as your workshop hosts if you could please just go ahead and drop in your name and where you're from in the Zoom webinar chat. And that would be phenomenal if you have any sort of ranch or ag operation or professional affiliation that you would like to list in there with your name. That would be great too. Padgley, just to confirm, I'm going to have you kind of monitoring the Zoom webinar chat and also fielding any questions that come through the Q&A feature. Do you have access to both of those on your end?
Yes, I should. Yeah, I do.
Perfect. Padley, are you guys able to see the effective collaboration in Indian land regeneration photo?
Yeah, we are.
Perfect. I just had an annoying text message notification come through. Did you guys see that flash up on the screen?
No, I did not see it.
Good, then they won't be
Although the
bothering us.
Q&A is in, the Q&A was blocking it, but I didn't see anything. I don't think.
Okay, gotcha. All right, I'm gonna fill up my tea and get ready to get started here. We will try to start right on time, but I don't want to start too early so that everybody has a chance to get logged in. We'll be back in a few minutes. Thank you everyone for joining us. If you have not yet, we would sure love to have everybody go ahead and drop in the chat feature their name, where they're from, and if you have a job title or whatever your favorite job title is, just go ahead and drop it in there, and then we can get a little more familiar with where everybody's from, who is joining us today. We will get started right at the top of the hour, but we're going to give it a few more minutes because we still have some participants trickling in today. Thank you for joining us. All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us today. It is 11 o'clock as my phone reads here in the Central Time Zone. So I want to make sure and appreciate everybody's time. Thank you for joining us and for choosing our workshop to join us today and to listen and to learn. Thank you all for introducing yourself in the chat feature. I'm seeing a couple of names that I'm familiar with and even some past conference and youth programming participants that have been engaged in some of our work in the past. So it's really great to not see you all, but know that you're here joining virtually today. Thank you for that. We do have a couple of representatives from the Intertribal Ag Council joining us today. They are pictured here. I'm gonna do a quick round of introductions and just kind of recap on what we hope some of the takeaways are for your participation in the conference today, and then we will get started. So I'm still seeing the participants number climb. So if you're just joining us, we are asking you to drop your name, where you're from, and what your favorite job title is in the chat feature. My name is Kelsey Ducheneau, Tatea Akwalawi Lakotia Imachia Pie. My Lakota name is Soft Little Breeze Woman. I am an enrolled citizen of the Cheyenne River Sioux tribe up here in north central South Dakota. We are a fairly large land-based tribe. We have around 3 million acres that we're responsible for managing here in the northern mixed grass prairie. I grew up on a cow-calf ranching operation, and I've spent the majority of my life really just being a soil nerd. I didn't know it, but at age 5, when there was a mound of soil outside from when they had built the foundation to our house, and I mean, I was an only child until I was 8, so that was where I spent a lot of my time growing up. That was my playground, and I think that's probably when I fell in love with soil, but I didn't realize that until I'd gone to college and actually attended a couple of Regenerate soil conferences as a herd fellow. So really happy to be here today. I do work for the Intertribal Agriculture Council as the Natural Resources Director, and I have some outstanding coworkers and colleagues that are joining today. Del, would you like to go ahead and take over and give your introduction?
Sure. Can you guys hear me okay? Great. Del Fike, I'm in Southeast Nebraska. I wear a lot of different hats in the regenerative ag side. My passion is helping people really start to reconnect with the land. And the intertribal deal has allowed me to help a lot of people get back to our agrarian base. And I guess a little bit more background about me is I've consulted in the past on regenerative practices across the country, working with people in about 40 different states, Canada and Mexico, and really have a passion to help the people, like I said, and I'm just really grateful to be a part of such a good program as we have today, and I hope I can lend a little expertise in the areas that you're looking to maybe advance.
Wonderful. Thank you, Del. We also have Padley Gonzalez. Padley, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, I can introduce myself. Hello, I'm Padley Gonzalez. I'm a member of the Gila River Indian community. I recently graduated from the University of Arizona with a degree in agricultural economics, and I'm interested in natural resources and how, like, a more holistic management of the land for agribusiness. That's it.
Wonderful. And Padley will be assisting us in monitoring the Q&A as well as the chat box as we go through today's presentation. Last, we have Shatil. Shatil, are you able to unmute yourself and give an introduction?
Yes, I am. I am Shatil Pierman. I am Lakota from the Cheyenne River Sioux tribe. I currently started in the as a natural resources program assistant, probably about a month ago now. I finished up schooling in May, but I am getting my master's right now. And I'm just really excited to continue in this new opportunity as a natural resources program assistant. So.
Absolutely. Well, thank you all for joining us today. That's a little bit, a small section of our team that's going to be leading this workshop today. I'd like to start off with expressing my appreciation again to the Kavira Coalition, along with all of the partners, the funders, as well as the volunteers, many of you that are on today's virtual workshop. That bring this amazing conference to fruition every year. I know that it always opens my eyes to a whole new paradigm and builds really long-lasting relationships, and is something that I look forward to every year. Of course, 2020 didn't go how anybody truly planned it, so we are going to go ahead and get things done virtually this year. With that, I am going to remind everybody of a couple of things with the online workshop setting. It's a little different than normal. Usually you can throw a piece of paper at me or wave your hand to get my attention. It's going to be a little bit different, but we're all going to learn and make it work anyway. There is the chat feature as well as the Q&A feature. I think at this point in the year, everybody's pretty familiar with Zoom. But we will be monitoring those throughout the time period. There will be a couple of breaks that we take to pause and kind of reflect. We'll probably take a break halfway through for a quick 5-minute restroom break, freshen up your coffee. And then at the end, we are going to go ahead and take a deeper dive into the question and answer section, okay? With that, I am going to go ahead and mute my video so that I can see my full screen, but we will be able to, you should still be able to hear me, and we will get started. Just briefly, we're going to start with a quick background on the Intertribal Agriculture Council. We're celebrating over 30 years working to promote Indian land stewardship and to really uplift those land stewards of tribal lands. Our mission is to provide a unified effort to promote change in Indian agriculture for the benefit of Indian people. And here's really the timeline. It was actually an act of Congress that established the Intertribal Agriculture Council in 1987 in response to a continual request for increased disaster assistance programming to take place and to reach the rural, very rural counties that also make up Indian country. Basically, the Senate Senate Committee on Indian Affairs said, you know, why they were posed with the question, why is there always such a significant need for disaster programming assistance in Indian country? And what was found from the report that was commissioned is that there had been such an underservice of the available USDA programming that serves within those counties that basically infrastructure, establishment of operations, and just basic means to get access to groceries or to feed for your animals was so behind that of the non-native counties that were even neighboring to those counties. And it indicated that there was a significant need for elevated and increased and more culturally relevant outreach to Indian country. This is where the Intertribal Agriculture Council really started in getting out there to enhance access to these resources and to also make sure that there was a better alignment with the resources that were being developed, with the needs, and with the cultural reality of Indian communities. In 2011, we really got to expand our programming by the establishment of our technical assistance program. This lined up a regional technical assistance specialist in each of the 12 BIA regions, which helped to carry our what was at the previous time just one national office into more of a regional level focus all across the country. In 2014, we realized that if we're only serving the ongoing producers of Indian country, we're serving a very small demographic, and that we have to really put our money where our mouth is as an organization and work to inspire and educate and engage the next generation of leadership in Indian food and ag communities and systems. So we unveiled more youth programming and expanded that across the country. And in 2019, we really saw that as a year for new beginning in Indian agriculture, where we saw the development of the Native American Ag Fund, which started to put some substantial funding behind the promotion of organizations that were directly serving Indian agriculture. Here is an alignment of our technical assistance network regions. This mirrors that of the Bureau of Indian Affairs distribution of regions. So you'll notice that some regions are very large in size. Some of them are very small in size. Some of them are even within one state. We've found that our technical assistance network specialists across the country are very aware of on the ground happenings from the local level all the way across the regional level. And they're, it's also their job to be aware of what's going on the national scope of things, to figure out ways to bring those opportunities and resources back into their region. So one of the things that I always like to start off with our conversation is, which state are you located in? Make note of which region you are in within the IACTA network. And you'll actually be able to go to our website to figure out who is the technical assistance specialist that is serving your region. And I absolutely encourage you to connect with them or reach out to me and I can connect you with them, because they know of some really great on the ground efforts that are taking place within the region right now. Our programming focuses in primarily 3 areas, but as times change and as the world dynamic shifts, especially in light of COVID, our programming has shifted to flex and meet the needs of our community members. We have a very prominent focus on youth, and we believe in developing all of our programming so that we can make room for youth to be involved. This is a part of why we love giving this presentation at the Quivira Coalition Regenerate Soils Conference every year, because of the Herd Fellows. That is such a great idea to have young and beginning farmers and ranchers engaged in this setting, and to figure out ways to make sure that lack of access to financial resources or lack of ability to take time off from work, different things like that, do not hinder our youth from having access to those to those learning experiences. We provide technical assistance, and really our motto here is meet the producer where they're at. We figure out ways to identify and relay resources to tribal producers, but we also make sure that tribal producers are in the decision-making rooms as well. We want to make sure that that voice gets carried into the settings that where these decisions that are going to impact multiple generations are being made. And then our American Indian Foods program, right? Agriculture and food, we all know that they go hand in hand. A lack of access to infrastructure, inequitable financing, a number of barriers have prevented so many of our Indian ag producers from being able to actually get into that value added commodity chain of producing food for their community members. And our American Indian Foods program is a partnership with the Foreign Ag Service that is established. Oh, sorry about that. I think the sharing is back now. That is a partnership that is established to really promote and uplift American Indian food businesses and identify methods for us to get more of our Indian ag producers into the food businesses. Now, there are a couple of considerations that we like to kind of lay out there as rules to the road when you're engaging in tribal communities. And what we are realizing is that there are so many, sorry, just double checking on the Zoom webinar chat. There is some dinging from text in the background and it's a bit distracting. I do not know that if that is my computer. I am on, I apologize if that's the case. My family is very obnoxious with their group chat. Okay, so rules of the road when engaging in tribal communities. We have some really unique opportunities that we've gotten to build relationships and kind of forge partnerships across tribal communities. And what we found is there's some common themes as you engage within historically underserved communities. Now, we're not going to say that the concepts or what we're presenting here today are going to perfectly fit every single community, because when we talk about tribal communities, we need to appreciate the fact that there are over 570 federally recognized tribes across the country. That is not even counting the state recognized tribes or the tribes that are still seeking recognition. So what we hope to express is the fact that we are presenting hopefully different outlooks or considerations, but we absolutely encourage you to always ask questions in an appropriate manner and figure out ways to better adapt and equip yourself to engage in tribal communities rather than coming into the space as though because you attended this workshop, you know it all and you know how to engage effectively. One consideration is, so I've got agriculture here and then I've got it crossed out. Our language matters, and the way that we propose or communicate or even lead ourselves into the space of communication is very critical. Communication is a two-way street. One side of it is talking, the other side of it is listening, right? So as we are communicating and what we're saying, we need to consider about those that we hope are listening and what is going to be their perception of what we're saying. The reason I use this comparison between agriculture and reconnecting our foodways, because across Indian country, there is totally different perceptions about what the word agriculture means. And so depending on which Native American population I'm engaging with, sometimes I will use the word agriculture very frequently. Other times I'll talk about food systems. I'll talk about food sovereignty. I'll talk about feeding our communities. Because for some Native American communities, agriculture is the damming of their foodways in the Pacific Northwest and the decimation of their indigenous food sources. And so we have to be very considerate when we use language. Another concept that this relates to is the use of Indian, Native American, American Indian, Cheyenne River Sioux tribe. What is the appropriate term or context in which you communicate about the historically underserved communities or populations that you're trying to engage with? Don't just expect there to be a standard that is accepted within your region. Actually do some research, ask the questions and inquire. Please do our best to ditch the alphabet soup. Our farm service agencies and United States Department of Agriculture and Coronavirus Food Assistance Program and all of these really great programs that exist out there, we found kind of get lost in the alphabet soup. CFAP, FSA, USDA, NRCS, EQIP, CSP. It's so easy to get lost in the acronyms that we use. And when you're communicating with a population that doesn't often learn about these opportunities, or it's not a secondhand nature for them to be engaged in these opportunities, we really need to take the time to make sure we're not relying too heavily on our acronyms and we're actually talking about the program title or the agency title. And remember that we have to focus on equipping our youth with skills. Both Padgley and Shatil, and even some of the participants in this workshop today, are a part of, or have been a part of, our professional development opportunities that we've taken part in the, or that we've hosted across the country in the past. And we really want to figure out ways to magnify opportunities for our youth through our professional development opportunities, so that we have that next generation engaged in this space. Next, we have the need to recognize regional potential. And this is where and why I shared our TA network specialists display across the map earlier already in this presentation. When we are engaging with historically underserved communities, we need to appreciate that the importance of valuing time, valuing engagement opportunities, and when we're relaying opportunities, it really is so helpful to be able to present a plethora of opportunities and to present a strategically prepared rundown of the opportunities that exist across the region. We need to encourage tribal involvement as often as we can, but we need to recognize that that's a two-way street. We don't just want to expect tribal community members and tribal agencies to engage in our programming. We need to figure out ways that we can engage in theirs as well. I've had so many organizations come to me saying, yeah, we invited the tribal producers to our grazing association workshop, but nobody showed up. My questions usually then are, where did you host the meeting? Was it on the reservation or off? How did you get a hold of them? Did you actually talk to them, or did you just send them a letter in the mail? How did you address them? What was your request of them? And a lot of times what ends up being discovered is that we have a lot of tribal producers that sometimes will feel like they were basically invited as the token minority so that that minority box could be checked. That's not what we're aiming for here. We're aiming for a long-lasting relationship where we have tribal member participation in these organizations, and we have organizations present out within those tribal communities. It's a two-way street. When we are appreciating the regional potential that exists, we can also ensure accountability of our allies. We need to be aware of what programs are reaching out to Indian country or the other historically underserved communities, and we need to hold them accountable for what they say that they're doing. And we need to make sure that the efforts that they have or the initiatives that they have been leading are appropriately accounting for the needs of those community members and not just exploiting, again, that checking the box of reaching minorities. And then it's important to offer opportunity. We don't just want to invite tribal producers to the local grazing association meetings. We want to reserve 20% of our grazing association committee board will be comprised of Native American producers. We want to make sure that the demographics are appropriately mirroring that of those engaged in our region. And we need to figure out ways to make sure that that is known by all entities. This opportunity not only exists, but it's reserved for you. We don't just want you to attend our meeting. We want you to have a voice at our meeting. It's critical to engage with local resources to develop markets. Like I shared earlier, there is a myriad of reasons as to why we don't have more resilient tribal food systems. It's quite astonishing, really, when you consider the fact that, prior to 1492, the only food systems that existed on this continent were resilient, and they were local, they were farm to school, they were know your food, know your farmer. They were all of these really great buzzwords and marketing tools that are used today, and they existed before. And now our tribal communities are some of the most disadvantaged in access to those sort of food systems. So we need to figure out ways to bridge gaps between tribal schools and grassroots efforts, nonprofit organizations, even agency opportunities and programs to reinstill and redevelop and redesign those markets to meet those communities in need. Interactions in this space will require and most often flourish as a result of abnormal activity. When we're engaging in these spaces, we should prepare to create some chaos in the fact that, you may have a group of youth that you bring out to a local farm. They've never seen a chicken before and they would love to hold a chicken and to touch a chicken. The girl that's holding the chicken actually had tears streaming down her face because it was such an emotional and exciting and thrilling time and experience for her to be able to hold the chicken. But this really goes beyond the concept of creating excitement and energy and into the reality of what so many of our farmers and ranchers are exposed to. We know that working in nature is chaotic. We know that being in the space of um, depending on external markets and considering the weather impact and trying to engage with a four-legged creature that you can't talk to, chaos exists in those spaces. And so we have to be comfortable with building that topic of conversation back into these settings. I always encourage that we embrace technology when we engage with historically underserved communities, because right here, what I'm seeing is, there's a dozen or so youth that are being able to learn about this native Hawaiian plant that is indigenous to their diet. But I'm also seeing 2 cell phones that are probably posting something on Instagram or Snapchat or Facebook Live. And who knows how many other youth within their home communities we are able to reach through that one picture capture. And that's really important. If we're not able to ensure every single individual gets access to every single opportunity, then we should be comfortable with embracing the technology that allows us to relay those opportunities virtually to those that are not there in person. However, we should not rely on technology. We should be good at making do with the resources we have available, because sometimes the technology that we bring into communities to talk about regenerative ag and regenerative soil health is totally different than that of the technology that will exist in the community once we leave. So here I was talking about doing biodiversity and soil cover calculations. And I had originally started using a square meter metal plot ring. And then I realized that none of these youth were going to have that when I leave. So I said, all right, well, let's find 12 or, let's find 4 things that are around 12 inches long. And let's just create our own little 12 inch by 12 inch plot here. And we're going to do the conversions later on. And I made do with what I had there. And I think we should consider that when we engage with our producers. Not every single producer is going to have a soil penetrometer, or they're not going to be able to take samples of their manure and send it into the lab. We need to teach them on the ground skills that they can deploy every day in their daily management of their operations. This one I find incredibly important and often overlooked in not a malicious way by any means, but a lot of times when organizations want to come into serving or filling the need that is expressed in an underserved community, they are excited to tell the story, to tell the success of what they were able to do. And sometimes that gets translated into in an inappropriate manner. We should remember that when we're documenting success in the work that we do, we must first document the success for those that we're serving first, and then document the success for us. This is a young lady who was just a phenomenal soul, and she came to our Great Lakes Intertribal Food Summit. And when she first showed up, she was very quiet, didn't really want to ask a lot of questions, didn't want to engage. And after one full day of working in the kitchen alongside some of the leading Indigenous culinary artists, bam, look at that confidence. That picture of her in amongst the mix of world-renowned Indigenous culinary artists, that is success that is worth documenting for her. That pride is just phenomenal. And we need to appreciate our responsibility as an organization to engage in policy that influences underserved communities. You know, when farm to school or different programming is up for debate through national policy, or when the Farm Bill rolls around, don't just read through the proposed amendments as they relate to you and your operation. Consider the impact that those provisions are going to have on those underserved communities. And don't be afraid to use your voice to advocate for more policy that will reach those underserved communities. Now, here's the fun part, a case study of what success looks like. And I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Del to lead this segment of the conversation.
Thank you, Kelsey. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Luckily, you can't see me, right? I'm gonna take that as you can't see me, and that's great. So that's what I was hoping for. So I have more of a face for radio than I do for anything, you know, on video. So thank you so much for having me talk about what we've been doing at Fight Cattle Company, and certainly our ties with starting this first slide with the Pawnee Nation in Oklahoma that have become family to my family and friends around the neighborhood. So my family homesteaded in 1869, which, as we all know, none of us really own any of the land. We're all supposed to just take care of it and try to make it better for the next generation. But with that little side note in there, they come from Germany. They just almost froze and starved to death out on the plains. And they found a Pawnee tribe, little group of people down by Middle Creek. And they went down there, they saw the smoke, they saw, you know, that there could be something going on there, and became very close with the Pawnee people that were actually part of the Omaha Agency. I think they could come out like 100 miles from the Omaha Agency. It's what I was told anyway. So starting then, my family had a deep appreciation to the people of the land, and we've tried to mirror what they taught us and basically saved us from that starting point. So this is Deb Agaholic from the Pawnee Nation, Oklahoma, standing in a field of some crazy cover crops and their blue corn that we planted, raised for them for 3 years. We didn't get to do it last year, but it became a very big part of that relationship, and bringing the Pawnee family back to some of their native land and bridging that gap. So the homeland ties really do go back to that chance meeting, or that definitely the thing that was out of necessity that we had to have from the family to stay alive with the other people in the neighborhood, and that was the Pawnee. It gave us that segue into what I feel is my family's been indebted to all the people that were here before us and all the people that were taking care of the land in a correct way. In these pictures, it's just showing some of the corn that we raised, and then some of the corn that we hauled down, that we put into the roundhouse where they did amazing things, all their traditions that we were able to be a part of. And when I preach about balance, and when I preach about we've done a lot of things wrong. Well, I've done a lot of things wrong, but I do preach the balance that all peoples bring of wherever they've started from, wherever they've originated. But our homeland ties really were started with the Pawnee people. This is a horrible picture of me in a beautiful little patch of blue corn that we raised for the Pawnee. And like I said, we had raised that for 3 years. We were able to take the largest crop of blue corn that their people had ever got to witness in the last 140 years before, they were taken out of this part of the world where we ended up. And the celebration and the unity that we've been able to bring together from basically starting with the soil. And I'm a huge believer in, if we get the soil right, we change all of society. And these programs like with IAC and these other groups that I'm so blessed to be able to talk with and present and work with, we have to bring that balance back. We have to bring that unity, starting with the soil. This picture does a great job of summarizing, hey, here I am, I'm trying to give back. I'm standing on the soil that's everyone's, that we're just trying to take care of. Another picture with Deb and I. Deb is absolutely one of my biggest mentors and best friends. I just had the chance to be with some of the Pawnee people just a few days ago, and I took some other corn from Nebraska down there, and they truly are family, and they are very proud of what IAC is doing and the involvement that we all have with trying to make it better. This is the group that came up from Pawnee and helped with the harvest. That would have been 2 falls ago. All considered family. Just an amazing group of people. Some of them came from the Pawnee College that are working on the side of indigenous foods and regenerative sustainable agriculture. We all left that day with a huge feeling of the connectivity that we need to have as peoples of this entire world into getting this right. So once again, I'm always going to go back to, when we get the soil right, we get everything right, the unity in people. It was a beautiful day. Just another picture of blue corn. Probably more pictures of blue corn in there. Picking blue corn, part of the crew. Here was our processing little facility out in the under the big blue sky. We had every different age group there, from my granddaughter that was helping, that was I think 4 years old at the time, to my mom and Deb, who were, my mom's certainly getting up there. She was 85, I think, when this was all happening. My family couldn't be more proud of what we've been able to do with not just the Pawnee, but how that's really allowed us to become a place globally for everyone to come to understand that when we get that soil right, we are changing a lot of things. It's not just a local thing. It's global. We know that regenerative practices, we know that these foods that have been raised for thousands of years are what we're going to have to do to get everything right again. And we know that the regenerative practices that were here long before any of my people were here, that's for darn sure, can be used any place in the world with just some tweaks. So it's a great picture of, kind of the event that day.
And from what I can see, it looks like there might be a little bit of chaos going on there. There's a lot of youth engagement. There's some flexibility involved. Food's always a great medium to come together around. So just as you consider your way through this case study that Dell's presenting, think back to some of those considerations and some of those abnormal methods to engage, and notice how they really help to bring together this story.
Kelsey, thank you so much for bringing that up, because anyone that knows me, and I know there's a few people on this this presentation that know me, and of course you know me very well. I flourish with chaos, and one of our mottos around Fight Cattle Company is we are not making mistakes fast enough, and meaning that we're changing constantly to try to make it better for not just our family, but for the community, the soil, the entire world. So we'll start with the Fight Cattle Company story. That's my grandfather, Adolf, on the white horse on some land that they had cattle on out in Colorado back in the day. But he was my biggest mentor, and probably one of the greatest naturalists that I was ever around. We spent a lot of time certainly walking around in that soil, trying to get the feel of what what it really was like. And he really was a big part of what drives me today. I truly did have a calling several years ago when I felt my grandfather tell me that, you're not the first in this regenerative deal. You're not maybe going to be the best, but we're really going to need your voice. And I think I have become really vocal in, we got to get this right for the soil and everything involved. That's a picture taken a few years ago. That's the home place in the background. We are certainly not that green right now. We've been very dry, and we are experiencing different types of weather that we've, as humans, probably have contributed immensely towards the degradation of that. So we are all dry land. Water underneath us starts, the aquifer is 4 miles west of us. We're blessed with heavy clay soils, which, as we continue to get the regenerative practices going in place and increasing organic matter, things like that, we're finding out that that's a huge blessing. And we're really more resilient because of that, where we used to, I could hear my father especially complain a lot about the heavy soils when they tilled it, things like that. Went to no-till in 1987, which changed that whole dichotomy of how those soils started to get back in place. But we do get rain. This last year we haven't. Our water is very scarce underneath us. I think our farm well that we just put in a few years ago that we were so excited, I think it's over 400 foot deep, and we get about 15 gallons per minute. So we understand the scarcity of water, and we try everything, including the Graze Master composite that we built, that I'll talk a little bit more later, that also utilizes less water. So yeah, my lifelong quest was to build the most accountable cow herd. We were registered Hereford for 70 years in the family. In the 80s, my dad and I started to transition some of those registered Herefords into a composite program that is basically was the start of a lot of different things that worked and didn't work, but got us to the point of our Graze Master composite that we trademarked, not so much as a breed, but as a philosophy in 2015. That particular composite that we have in the Graze Master, that breeding, is a Hereford Red Angus Simmental Aubrac combination. But like I say, in theory, if you're using, you have to draw to the right genetics. They're acclimated to the areas you're in, and so that's why I say it's more of a philosophy, because we just want to help people use what they have in the programs. Like if it's high desert country, there's different breeds to use, things like that. So it's more of a philosophy. Our Graze Masters are set up for what we're doing in southeast Nebraska, and they work very well. So we really, back in the day, we were feeding a lot of cows. We were doing a lot of things wrong. We're in a very natural type system now. The Graze Master fits very well. Yes, I am a recovering agaholic. The 80s farm crisis hit. I was a little different. My dad didn't co-sign any of my notes. I co-signed his. I was in my teens. I had a group of cows that were bought and paid for. My dad didn't have a lot of debt. but I knew that it was bothering him. I stopped by the local bank, talked to my dad's best friend who was a banker, and said, how can I help my dad on this? And he goes, well, you know, a little bit more security wouldn't hurt. I signed his notes. We were off to the races on getting debt paid back. At age 20, at a Thanksgiving type event or whatever it was called, I don't understand all that completely, but my dad walked up behind me and told my three sisters that tomorrow Dell's 100% in charge. So at age 20, I didn't get a great operation. I got a lot of debt and worn out machinery and a philosophy that I should do the right thing for my family, neighbors, and everyone around me, including the soil. That kind of was a segue into increasing our seed stock operation. And then my cousin and I began to rent a lot of ground, 7,000 acres in southeast Nebraska. We're the largest field. Probably the average field size is 40 acres. So we farmed 92 miles from point A to point B. We were doing everything wrong. We really had an epiphany when the health of both my cousin and myself kind of came to a head. And through multiple back surgeries, I've been blessed to actually go to college for the first time when I was in my 30s. And then I headed to town to work for a while and managed a medical clinic where they really helped me understand our patients that came in really had not the best things to say about agriculture. So probably starting in 1999, when we understood what people's perceptions were of what we were doing, and they were not good. We were seeing the wheels were really falling off, and there was a lot of things going wrong. We were basically going broke, doing all the wrong things that people were telling us were the right things. So, when you start thinking about, did I need all that machinery debt? Did I need to be putting on all those harmful chemicals, fertilizer, everything like that? Did I need to do the vaccines, the porons? And did I need to have my vet come out all the time? And did I really need to be feeding all those extra feeds that I could just improve with my forages? Absolutely. It was a big eye opener. As my mom got to say one day when she was talking to me, my dad's been gone about 9 years, and she was talking shortly after he passed away. She said, who's making all the money here? Why aren't we making any money? And I said, well, the machinery guy, the chemical guy, all these guys, they're making money. And she slapped her or hit her fist on the table and said, let's send him packing. And we did. I had a directive from my mom that was, almost 80 years old at that point, to do things different. And that was the green light that I just needed some reassurance that we could. Our current operation is not even close to 700 acres now. It's about 480 acres because we ran a little bit out. We've reduced our inputs. We rebuild the soil on every inch, every place, cover crops, animal impact, anything we can do, different forages like that, overseeding in the pastures. We intensive graze where it's practical, and that is about 40% of the time, and that will consist of moving cows 1 to 3 times a day to maximize the grass and to really build the soil. I'm a firm believer in getting the right genetics in each area, and that's why I was talking earlier about the Graze Master composite. That theory or that philosophy of crossbred cattle are going to work any place, it really holds true. It's just, are we going to have the right ones in that area? And that's something we really need to think about. And we do that a lot with our regenerative grazing through these different programs. The picture on the left, and I always go back to healthy soils, and that's, I'm not a soil scientist. I'm a lover of the soil. I am just from agrarian base like everyone else is, but I truly believe that when we get those soils right, everything is perfect. So that picture shows a spot where we actually bale graze, where we just tipped up a bale of alfalfa on some very poor cool season grasses in that area. 3 months later, we took that picture. You can see on the left the spade full of worms, and that clump is starting to change in colors to the right, where it's still a pale color and there's no life as far as a macro form that we can see in there, showing the power of the, doing the right thing with the forages we have and putting them in an ideal situation, letting the cows or the animals do the work. The other side is just a crazy beetle I found. This is a field actually where I was standing, where we had the blue corn. People from all over the world have come to this field, and they've asked us millions of questions on how we've done it in this way. So in 10 years, we took the organic matter from 2.6 to 6.9. And that was through cover crops, super intensive animal impact. Of course, we had some good rains during that time as well. We know we can't do that on every soil across the world. We know we can do it where we're at our place. And it's something to really consider every time we're changing that organic matter. Every time we change it at 1%, we're holding at least another 20,000 gallons of water per acre with each percent of organic matter that we're improving. We know we can do it any place in the world. We've had people replicating what we're doing there with great successes. We want to help all the people really get this figured out, because we are out of time with trying to get this soil right. If anybody wants any light reading, Darwin did a great book on earthworms, and this is one of his quotes, or one of his facts in there. An acre of healthy soil contains around 1 million earthworms, and these earthworms deposit 700 pounds of the best nutrients. Now, we know that earthworms weren't indigenous to this country. We know there were other things that were working in that soil. Right now, it's just a pretty good indicator of where we're at on some of this. And when I get past clients and friends from all over the country, from eastern Montana to western Texas, saying I found an earthworm, well, you're trying to do things right, because those are pretty poor soils, and at least in those areas, it's showing a definite change. And there's a lot of different things, for metrics that we can use to see how that soil is being improved. The earthworms are just something that we can see easily. We don't have very much machinery anymore. Our red cows do a lot of the work. In fact, that's a alfalfa red clover orchard grass field that they're taking the first cutting off, and they're taking the last cutting off, which eliminates 2 times that we're not haying. So whenever we can get nature, livestock, anything like that to work in balance, it's better for the soil, for us, and for the bottom line. Anybody that's heard my talks knows how excited I get with how much manure and urine a cow puts on. 75 to 100 pounds of manure and urine per day. That was created to be the most perfect fertilizing machine, second to only the buffalo, as far as what works well in the Great Plains. And we've got to watch farm after farm and ranch after ranch be improved by doing intensive grazing and adding the right forages, but using that cow or using the ruminants to really do it well. Like we talked about the bale grazing, we still put up a lot of hay, just for the fact that we're trying to build soil in a lot of weak spots. And where I talked on that picture before, where we put the bale in February and soil sampled it in May, here's the results. So where the bale was, we have 4.92 tons per acre of dry matter. Outside the grazing area, it tested 1.79. So when we think about that on a production model alone, how much more profitable gaining those extra tons were in that area. So you can see kind of where I'm standing. The grass is super tall and dark green there, and it kind of diminishes later. Biocarpeting is still another thing that we use a lot, where we'll either unroll bales to translocate the seed, let the cows eat what they want, tromp the rest in. You can build soil super fast that way. You'll see a lot of people that cab out cows on certain meadows every year, how that's most likely their best soil, and it's because of the animal impact. Another picture of cows basically applying everything we need for nutrients. Alfalfa, same point, of red clover in that patch. They were just coming off that day, but you can see some corn standing in the background. We're very diverse in what we raise. We have about 15 different crops going now with cover crops and everything like that. And an NRCS test where we purposely let weeds come back and graze them early. We have to remember that one of the best things to graze for crops is weeds when it's done at the right time. A lot of nutrients, things like that. They were blown away. The cattle did great. It shows an economic advantage. People ask me, what's my favorite thing to graze? And I'll say anything I can put a fence around. And that's truly the way I feel. I took this picture a few years ago. It's actually a full-blood Obrak calf. We all have to start making ends meet, but it starts with the soil, and it starts with the collection of all the peoples that we deal with in the world. And we are all in this together, and we know that we don't have very many years left to get this right. And so it's very important that we start thinking about how do we make ends meet, but not just from a profitability standpoint, but how we really get it right with nature and in balance with nature. Because when we get that right, like I said, everything falls into place. The profitability comes, the health of the people, the soil, everything comes. So it's something we just have to think about. Cool. I'm sorry I kind of blew through that fast. I wanted to get back to Kelsey's really important information, but we're just going to talk a little bit more on where some of these maps are and how we're doing these practices across all the native populations and things like that. So as everyone can see, there's a wealth of resources, and we have to go back to the people that are the resources that can do these things, because in this group of people alone, I've never got to see more potential, as the first regenerative people to really get these things right. So, yeah, you guys can see that it's every place, and we're working on a lot of cool different things. I always love to talk about we're not using the entire buffalo or bison. When we think about it, in agriculture, we only use bits and pieces of things, and we throw the rest away. And we're missing the whole bigger picture by not using the entire animal. It's just a great analogy on how we, when we use everything that was provided for us, how it all stays in balance, how it really works for the betterment of not just the soil, but of the environment and peoples in general. So it's a crazy graph. I know it's like very busy, but I just want that effect of that. Everyone can do what we're doing from a regen standpoint. That's a garden that we've had on our place a couple of years ago. We found out very quickly that there's certain things I like to grow next to each other. When I farmed large scale, I could not raise a garden. I thought I was an amazing farmer. Well, there's a difference between touching the soil and really raising things via your hand versus putting things in a artificial environment that were set up, for an artificial environment. So when I get to tell people and talk to people from all over the world, when you do things right, start with a garden, but you're going to do a great job. If you can do a garden, you can get this regen deal figured out. Regen can be used, like I said, from any size. That's a friend of mine in central Nebraska that had roller crimped a bunch of cover crops, planting right into it, to a friend of mine in Omaha that's doing the same thing basically in a garden setup. My granddaughters have, there's just two of them pictured. I actually have three, but when you get everything right, you have the room for the most important things, which are the people that you're trying to be around, the people that you're trying to really create the legacy for, which the legacy is getting the soil right, and it's doing cool things with your neighbors and the people that are around you and the people that are all over the world. So don't forget about why we're trying to get to that, because it is the people. And I think that's all of mine. Is that correct, Kelsey?
Yes. Sorry, I was trying to get unmuted.
You're fine.
We have created a workshop activity that everybody participated. We played around a couple of times. Really, we know that we're on day 2 of a very well thought out extended conference. And so we figured what better way to bridge gaps and to make connections than to actually have a feedback form, basically, that we would like to ask everybody that participated in this workshop to fill out. The address to find that form is bit.ly/IACOCT27, and it's listed right there in the upper right hand corner. And really what we hope you take away as you complete this feedback form, and it's, I don't want you to think of it as an evaluation survey, because I'm sure that the conference staff are going to do something similar to that. What we're trying to gauge is, what resources or opportunities and connections can we make just within the group of attendees on this workshop? So ask yourself, what have I done? What am I doing? What will I do to promote regeneration of Indian lands? And ask others, as you have room and space to engage with them virtually over the course of the next couple of weeks, what have you done? I should say, what are you doing and what will you do to promote regeneration of Indian lands? I think that we all know we owe it to those that have come before us to leave this place better for those that are going to come after us. And that really does start with starting to mend and build and appreciate and uplift the underserved communities that are working tirelessly to overcome a lot of the disparities that exist as the reality. So if you would take a few minutes, go ahead, go to bit.ly/IACOCT27. If you want to do it on your phone, if you are on your laptop computer, or if you are unable to close out of the Zoom on only one device and go to this form now, we ask that you do it sometime over the course of today. There's some opportunities on the feedback form where we ask if you would like to schedule a networking call over the course of the next couple of weeks, or if there's any particular resources you're looking for or you would like to offer. And we kind of hope that we can use the culmination of the responses to this form to makeshift create some of that networking opportunity that we don't necessarily have with the face-to-face lunches and breakout sessions that we would have in Albuquerque this year. I do want to make sure and share Dell and his different outlets for being able to contact him, as well as highlight that we do have our annual conference coming up in in December, December 7th through the 10th, 2020. It is going to also be virtual. We typically, you have an annual conference in person in Las Vegas, Nevada. This year, we've decided to take it virtual, and we've waived the registration fee. So if you've ever been looking for an opportunity to engage, now is a great time, a great chance. You can do it from the comfort of your own home. You can learn about ways to register today by going to www.indianag.org/events. And I'm going to go ahead and you can see both Dell and my contact information there. There was a couple of questions. I'm going to leave the page on this workshop activity page for those that are still working on their activity. But Padgley, if you would unmute yourself and please share information or the questions that have come through the chat.
We got one question. It was, what is the vision of your project with the blue corn? Where does it go from here? And Dell answered it, and he said that he grew it as an ask from the Pawnee, and they were doing amazing things with it. It's a beautiful plant. And that was our only question.
Wonderful. So now I guess is the chance where I would like to open it up for anybody else. If there are any more questions out there, I am working on fixing the link. Thank you guys for flagging that to me. I know for a fact that I made sure the forum was open to the public, but I must not have click save or something like that. I apologize, and I'm working to fix that right now. All right, the form is fixed. Dell, I did have a private message come to me via chat. The question really relates to how you started to engage in conversation that led to the opportunity to grow the corn on your land. What did some of that initial communication look like?
It started through Carrie Hofsnyder, who is with IAC on the marketing side. She's worked with our family for several years on really trying to get this regen deal going. And she, I believe, ran into some people at Genoa Indian School, and they had brought up that Deb Agaholic was going to speak at an event the next day at the University of Nebraska, this is all pretty amazing. It just fell into place. We went to listen to her, and I believe Electa, I can't remember who was all there. Yeah, they all actually, after we talked to them, they all wanted to come right out to the farm because we were just 14 miles from where they were speaking. And I started telling the story, about what the Pawnee had done for my family, and that they were standing basically in the area or very close to where that all started. Took them down to where I knew the Pawnee had their camp along the river and things like that, or along the creek and things like that. And it really went perfectly. They asked if we could grow some of their blue corn. We said we'd give it a try, and it turned out to be a very successful deal for them. Unfortunately, my time commitments with a lot of other things did not allow me to do it last year, but we at least got their program going, and helping them figure out their soils in Oklahoma so they can raise it themselves. So it all was quite a blessing that it happened that way.
All right, we have another question. Great workshop. Would you please repeat the best way to connect with the TA in your region? Thanks.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that question to us. I highly recommend taking some time to visit www.indianag.org. On our website, we have a rundown of all of our staff, the different technical assistance network regions that exist, and which staff serve which regions, which staff are more on the national scale. We also have a variety of resources. Our opportunities to learn are not restricted specifically to Native American producers. We target our reach to the historically underserved communities, but we know that in reaching out to those communities, we're going to be able to reach non-natives, non-minority communities as well. And we love that. Anybody is invited to our annual conferences and to our regional workshops. They're invited to utilize the resources and the tools, the different learning opportunities that we have available online. It's free access to all of these opportunities. So please take them up in whatever way makes sense for you and your operation. I would visit www.indianegg.org to figure out on the Who We Are tab, you will be able to figure out who is the technical assistant for your region and who you would reach out to. You're also able to reach out directly to Dell and myself, Dell@indianegg.org, Kelsey@indianegg.org, and we can directly connect you as well. There is a question that came through to me that asked if if our conference is open to non-native ag folks. Absolutely. Please register to attend. We would love to have you. And then I see a question that come through as someone outside of ag, but who understands the importance of grazing in grasslands in the Great Plains specifically, and also indigenous foods. What do current ranchers and farmers think of raising bison? Is this feasible? I will go ahead and give my answer to the question first, and then I'll allow, then Dell can jump in, and Shatil and Padgley if you have anything to answer. We do work with a number of bison operations across the landscape here in the Great Plains region, and even into the Rocky Mountain and Southern Plains regions. Bison are an animal that is designed to be able to cover a vast landscape, and I feel that they are such a phenomenal resource to indigenous communities and in our diet. But we should really hold ourselves accountable for ensuring that we can provide to them the life that they have evolved to be able to have, and that we appreciate the evolution of that food source and the staple in our diet over time. A lot of the barriers that we see when it comes to raising bison are large infrastructure costs and investment that we have to make in order to restrict them to such small land bases that they're not genetically trained or evolved to be restricted to a 1,000 acre pasture. They're designed to travel. They're designed to follow the seasons. And we as people used to be designed to follow the bison too. So a lot of the cause for concern that I've found in the concept of bison ranching, or a lot of the failures that we've seen in the adoption of bison to this new formed life that we expect for the species is, in my opinion, really similar to that of what we've inflicted upon our tribal communities. We've taken away their way of life and their nomadic lifestyle and their nomadic utilization of resources and holistic management of thousands upon thousands of acres in that nomadic lifestyle pattern. And so we have to really redesign and reimagine what that potential for an operation looks like, and figure out a way that is culturally appropriate, financially feasible, and still conducive to producing a regenerative model in the ecosystem as we adopt and update that operation style. Del, anything to add there?
I would concur with everything you're saying, Kelsey, 100%. And because of all those things you brought up, that's why, and I've got the chance to work with a lot of different bison operations over the years too. That's why we go with the second best thing on the plains, which is the cows, which, yes, their hooves are shaped a little bit different, things like that, but we still have the same impact in a sense where we're using intensive grazing, where we're utilizing big groups in a small area for a short amount of time, then being moved on by different fencing and things like that. So we work with what we have, and I'm very conscious about why those bison type operations need to be very large scale. They need to be very nomadic. They need to be very in place with the cultures from the past and things like that. So we work with what we have, where we're at, and we try to make the most of it. So I would agree with everything you're saying, and I hope that added a little clarity.
Absolutely. Well, thank you everyone for joining us. We're coming to the end of our time set aside for the workshop today, but luckily we were able to get this started on get this workshop presented on the second day of the conference. So please, over the course of the next couple of weeks, do reach out to us. Please take the time to fill out the feedback connection form so that we can find a way to collaborate with you in the future, and enjoy the remainder of your conference. If you guys are in a climate that is turning into winter too fast, like I am up here in South Dakota, stay warm. And if you're not, please enjoy some of that sunshine for me. You all have a wonderful conference, and thank you for joining us today.